Welcome to Recruitment Rehab, the podcast for your recruitment confessions. Yes, we'll talk about what makes a great recruiter, a great recruitment business, and the secrets behind the success of our various guests. But we're also here to unpack why the industry has such a stellar reputation. You know, like being ranked just above traffic wardens and just below estate agents in the public's hearts. Each episode, we're going to be joined by guests from across the recruitment spectrum to share war stories, confess their past sins, and even maybe admit to being the reason that someone was sworn off recruiters forever. It's part therapy, part revelation, and entirely more honest than your average job spec. This is Recruitment Rehab. Let's get stuck in. So we're doing things a little bit differently today. This is our first podcast recorded remotely, and that's because today's guest is based in New York. So he started as employee number one at 3PX in London back in 2015, joining as a trainee to focus on the SAP market. From being the company's first ever hire to helping scale the team to 33 heads, he played a key role in building out the UK business before launching their USA division. He won their first client in the USA in 2019, moved over to New York in 2022, and has since grown the New York office to 11 people and $4 million in revenue this year. Over 10 years, he's been promoted 8 times, all whilst remaining hands-on and consistently billing over $1 million annually, with a career best year of $1.7 million. A genuine example of loyalty to a business and leading from the front. Jesse, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
So look, we'll start from the beginning. I start all the podcasts the same. So kind of take me back, if it's okay, to the very beginning, like how you got into recruitment and then kind of your journey to where you are today.
Yeah. So I did history at university, which lends itself to absolutely nothing. So if I didn't want to be a historian or a teacher, then I had to work something out. And then I took a year out. I did a bit of traveling, and I played a bit of football to prove that I wasn't good enough to do that. And then I was like, okay, cool. It'd probably suit me to get into sales. And that was probably the avenue that I thought. I remember applying to an advert. There was like a sports broker or whatever. And I remember speaking to my mates, how good would it be, like all these perks I'll get from brokering these sports events and getting like selling tickets to them and stuff. When really, I think that's just a fake advert that a rec-to-rec company would put up to get like sporty grads who want to get into sales applying to their stuff. So then a rec-to-rec firm did indeed get hold of my resume in that way, and then kind of told me about recruitment, and it sounded decent. You know, it's the same that I speak to all the grads now. Like you don't need to spin a yarn like this is the thing you've been wanting to do or you're so set on it. You know, you just need to think that you've got some kind of transferable skills for it. So yeah, no, I went into that and had a few interviews, and I met Mike at the time, who was the founder of just a one-person business, and I thought he seems like a good bloke, and he seems like he's going to care about my success because it's only going to be me. So I'll just throw myself into that. With more knowledge, you would probably see that as more of a risk than it was. You know, I kind of just thought, I'll back myself, and he seems to be a stand-up guy who I could trust to support me through that and give me a helping hand. So it has turned out that way. And I think sometimes I do land on my feet in those kind of situations. So yeah, there were a few other opportunities that I had, but I thought that felt like a good one. We were in an office in Bank. There was just the two of us and one other guy who started with me and one guy part-time. And then there were 2 people in the office who didn't even work for us, but they were like Mike's mates who were also setting up a company. So it was like real small, like a meeting room of this size. And we were all in there in Bank. It was pretty old school, but it was in a good location. It was exciting just being right in the heart of London. And it felt like what it should feel like. It was the start of a business. And it's just a bit of a shame that we didn't document those offices as we've risen through. You know, we have 5 offices now. People come into the one in London where you like a top floor of, you know, still a WeWork, but a top floor where it's got a glass meeting room and all those things, and a kitchen to ourselves, which is a far cry from the one toilet that we shared with like 12 other offices at that point. And even in London now, you look out in New York, you look out on the Hudson River, like it's very cool, you know, and it's just trying to document that journey. So yeah, I fell into recruitment like most would, I guess, and just threw myself into it. And I remember putting in my diary, like, am I still doing this in 5 months, you know, because it's tough, you know, and obviously people now will see me and be like he's lived and died recruitment his whole life, but it snowballs, you know. So I'm just trying to help it snowball for other people quicker, you know, and understanding and feeling their struggle with it. You know, we hire people that are normally used to success, and you're not normally very successful straight away. So it's just giving that kind of comfort. So yeah, I very much came in as like the grads that we're hiring now in New York and London.
That's extremely shrewd. advertising the sports brokerage. That's the first time I've
Yeah, well, maybe it isn't. I'm pretty sure it is, but that was the end result anyway. So whether it was intended or not, that was the end result of that advert, that job applicant. But it makes sense, doesn't it? I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, fair enough. Well, look, 40% of recruiters leave within their first 12 months. Like, what do you think that allowed you to have the success that you've gone on to have when so many people fail?
Uh, I don't know. I mean, I struggled with the blind work of it as well. I struggled with like, you put a lot in and you don't get much out. Like it's completely different to anything else you've done. And I explain recruitment to people like, they normally come out of education. It's like you do an essay, you hand it in and you don't get any marks. 100 people hand in that first one really confidently. They do another one, they still don't get any marks. 30 people just chuck it in. I'm not writing an essay and not getting any marks for it. And then, like you say, there's 20 or 30 people that get to essay number 8 or 9, just trusting the process. And then they get the marks for all the previous 9. And I think that's how I'd explain it then. I struggled with that concept a bit, but I just kind of just always, I backed myself and I was like, well, I'm going to make a success of it. And I'll just do whatever it takes, and I don't know what that is and what it's going to take, but I'll just do that. So I think it was just, I guess I had some kind of natural confidence and aptitude, but that's 10%, like that sales stuff is like 10%, and you only get yourself in those positions where you need to demonstrate confidence by doing loads of boring, monotonous, hard work and outreach, which I think, again, I was pretty happy to do. And I think I wasn't hugely money motivated. Like my parents hadn't earned lots of money. We were in no way hard off at all, but it was still, there was a ceiling to what I perceived as like earning. So I wasn't there desperately trying to earn 100K as soon as possible. And I think that's why people fall out of it. They get into it for all the right reasons, like money motivated, and they're desperate to earn that money. And that's the only reason they're doing it. And then they fall out because realistically, you're not going to earn that straight away. So I think I had that patience to let it build, but I also had the urgency to do as much in every day to get that success quicker. Often people have too much of one or the other. They're either too patient and passive in what they do, or they're too urgent and frantic and desperate to earn money that they never get.
Yeah, it's interesting that I've not I would normally expect to hear people say like I was massively driven by money, like I would not fail. I wanted a Lamborghini or
Yeah,
whatever. Whereas you said that not being like that has allowed you to gave you a degree of patience, which
yeah.
helped you stick at it.
Well, I said in my interview, Mike asked me what do I want to earn in 5 years, and I said 50K. Because I didn't know. There was no, that to me was a decent amount of money that would reflect some level of success. And and obviously I earned that pretty quickly. And again, I was doing it to be really good at the job, and I knew then money would be a byproduct of that, and I think that's the same I see with the top performers here. Like they're motivated by the opportunities it has given me, but it's not the reason why. It's not what I get off a client call thinking. I get off a
Mm.
client call thinking, cool, I need to be the expert that I just said I'll be. I remember I was trying to get him Rolls Royce for 2, 3 months, and I was on a day of leave. And they emailed me saying, okay, we're ready to go now. And I just came in or finished that. I was like, cool, I'll have a day of leave some other time. Went in the office, found them 3 really good candidates. The next day, HR said we can't do it. But well, I wasn't thinking, oh, I need to desperately get that money, that commission. I was like, I've told them I'm really good at this. They've now given me the opportunity, and I need to be accountable to deliver for it. Because I think that's it. Like if you're just looking at the end, the money, you miss out all the important steps on the way. And like people who always talk about, yeah, what they want to earn and what they want to achieve and the billings they want to do, that doesn't just pop out of thin air. Just take pride in what you're actually doing and what you can control, and that will sort itself out, really.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think it kind of links back to um, the instant gratification piece, and people wanting like that
Yeah,
success straight away, and I suppose that is one thing that leads to people failing, as you've just touched on.
yeah.
I was going to ask like what is one mistake that you see recruiters make time and time again that ultimately leads to them failing? So I suppose like aside from the need for instant gratification, is there anything
Yeah.
else that you can think of?
Well, I think it's also that kind of the next thing is always going to be the big shiny object that's going to get you the lottery. People that are just willing to work anything, and they're just like, oh, that will be easier. Maybe they've hit their head against a wall for 2 months in a market in a niche, when actually they were just about to get the returns from that, and now they're off doing something else. Like it's really that lack of conviction, which I think comes with experience, and you need a manager and a leader that almost imparts that conviction on you and says, trust me, this is the way to go. Like, this is what we need. You're being successful in recruitment when you start. You need a deal a month, that, and you're there for 40 hours a week minimum. That's 160 hours that you're putting into it just to get one deal. Like, you don't need loads of constant morale boosting successes. They're nice to have, but you need to get that one committed client a month at a minimum to get you off and running. So you don't need huge amounts. And I think people always want new, they message 100 candidates, they hear from the 10, let's say, most fluid market candidates and easiest to get hold of. And then they go off and message the next 100 and skim the surface of that. When really now you want to go back to that 100, send another message, and you speak to another 10 and you chip away. It's not fun. It's not nice to work in a niche and keep going over the same ground. You want to reach out to 50 new people who've never ignored you before because you're like, brilliant, they're going to reply, aren't they? When really you're much closer to getting a reply from the ones that you've been responding to. So I think it's just that kind of stay in your lane, and be an expert and really specialize in something and just trust that it comes. But again, that comes from leadership to have that. Because again, if a manager's got someone in their team not performing, the easy thing to say is, okay, cool, yeah, we're doing this new thing now. They report, they're like, yeah, we're doing this new market, so we're confident this is going to be the thing. So we've got a plan, like we've got this new, and it all feels new, and everyone's like, okay, cool, that feels like positive action, when really you're just starting from square one again. So I think as the amount of recruiters I've seen who are desperate to earn money, who have all the right work ethic, but they've changed jobs 2 or 3 times because they found a problem somewhere other than within themselves, and then they keep recurring the same issues. So it's all from the good intention normally, but it can hold them back, and someone who's a little bit more patient again, but still has that urgency, can maybe get that scalable growth a bit quicker.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. What's one thing as a biller, this is, because we'll get onto management in a bit, but what's one thing as a individual contributor that you do every day that your desk couldn't live without?
Well, I do everything every day, and that's the main thing, I think. Like, I do BD every day, like I'm always desperate to win my next job, to win the next client that can fuel my success, the team's success, like no matter how many clients I've got. And I think that started because when I joined the business, we had 2 or 3 clients, like, again, I just joined the business thinking every company just had 2 or 3 clients. Like, it wasn't something that I was aware of. So it's always been that kind of, okay, we need more, we need more, we need to build this. So I think that's it, and I see people that hit inconsistent billings where they get a job and they stop doing BD so much. They've worked really hard to do BD, God, what a chore it is, how hard it is, not getting much success. And then they get a job and they're like, brilliant, I can just focus on filling this job for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but then there's nothing coming through the pipeline. So they've got to start from ground zero again. So I think it's just that consistency. That means your day gets longer, and like, it's like the beauty of it, if you're in a finance team, you get given 5 hours of work to do, your day gets longer. You don't get paid anymore to do it, like, but for us, we get more work, which we've gone out and got. That just means your day gets longer. You've got a chance to earn more money. That doesn't mean you drop off like daily admin tasks or BD tasks. You've got to maintain all that stuff. And yeah, maybe you're going to be working to 8 p.m., 9 p.m., but you might get a £3,000 commission check in 2 or 3 weeks. And if I told you you'll get £3,000 if you stay for another 3 hours each day this week, everyone would do it. So again, it's just trying to bring that closer. So I think it's that consistency of never having enough clients and never having good enough clients, and always thinking you're a call or email away from someone that's going to give you 200K worth of revenue next year. So why wouldn't you make that call, no matter how many clients you've already got?
Yeah. And I'm assuming there's a few things, but if you had to pinpoint like 1 or 2 major things, like what do you do differently now compared to when you started?
Well, that's like, everything's just more efficient now, like in a good and bad way. Like, just like necessity means I can't do everything that I would want to do, and everything that I'm teaching an associate or new to recruitment to do, I don't do every bit of that, So I think it is very different, like I'm still creating new business, but it's like sniper, like I guess BD and relationship led stuff, like obviously 5 years ago, and it's a bit different. It's a reflection of the market as well. 2021, you could send a great candidate to 150 people and you'd probably win loads of jobs, and you'd be able to do a deal off the back of that. I don't think that's really landing now. So I don't do much. Well, I don't do any kind of mass approach now, like I still encourage the team to do a bit of that, and couple it with quality stuff and quantity. So I think it's completely different. And every year I think I've cracked, like, I think, cool, this is the best way of doing it. This is the best way to to bill a million, this is the best way, whatever. But how I'm doing things to 3 years ago is completely different. How I'm doing things 6 years ago is completely different. And each time I thought I was doing it well. And I think that's the key thing, is just having an open-mindedness to, hopefully you don't know anything, and there's a better idea coming along. And that's how I kind of encourage everyone to be here. It's like, I want someone to walk in this door and prove to me I know 10% what there is to know about recruitment, because that bodes really well for me being able to earn more money and impart more wisdom. So yeah, I think it's ever changing. And like, I've obviously got a lot of responsibilities other than billing. So 3 or 4 hours a day, let's say I do actual recruitment stuff. I've got to be quite efficient with that, rather than, and that helps. I think that's the key. That's the problem with recruitment as well. Like, you don't have any deadlines, you've got all day to do nothing and to do everything. Like, there's no homework that you're given. There's no project that you're given to then go in and hand in. Like, no one's really expecting anything of you. Clients even aren't expecting anything of you. They're expecting you to be rubbish. So, there's no, that's the tough thing. And you need to create those deadlines. You need to create little competitions. How much can I do in half an hour? How much can I do in an hour? And can you beat yourself yesterday? Or can you beat the person next to you in a little competition like that? Just to create some kind of intensity of time. Because otherwise it's pretty easy to have 8 hours, 9 hours in a day and lose 3 of them because you've got time.
Yeah, 100%. How have you found doing the US market? Obviously, I know you started in the UK and transitioned to the US. So yeah, how did you find that transition?
Well, it's funny now. Like, I didn't mind doing the shifted hours at all. I'd be working till like 8, 9 p.m. in the office, then go home and do some emails. Because even when you get ready, I remember like brushing my teeth and you'd see an email. You're like, well, if I don't reply to that now, I'll have to wait all tomorrow. So you rush back to your computer and do it. So I think that was fine though. It's like anything, like when that's what you knew and that's what you were doing. Like, I remember getting like deliveries. Well, I get deliveries in the office now at 5 p.m. here, which just seems a little bit less excusable than the deliveries I used to get at like 9 or whatever. And there was some fun hustle to it, and it was, I remember the first deal with in 2018, 19 with a US company, and we had to magic together a contract. There was still me and Mike then. We didn't have a back office team that we do now. So it was fun. But I think the market in general is brilliant. Like there's so much opportunity, but you can get swallowed up in it. Like you have to really, again, pick a niche and pick a lane. Like, if you go into the US and you just want to grab as much as you can, then yeah, there's opportunity, but you'll get swallowed up and you won't maximize it. So I think, again, it's trying to compartmentalize the market and segment it up so you can get it all eventually, but you're not trying to get it all at once. So I've always been very niche focused and kind of expand from there. So yeah, I like the adjustment. It was funny when I went back for 2 weeks just now, doing the US market and obviously managing the guys here in the US. Like, I don't know how I did it for that long. Like, I'd have some training sessions with the UK guys in the morning over there, and then in the afternoon I'd have all my catch-ups with the team here. Then I'd be having calls every 15 minutes, like till like 8, 9 p.m. I was like, how did I do this for 3 or 4 years? So it's like anything. I used to get on the tube in London for 20 minutes every day, packed, and didn't bat an eyelid at it. And then as soon as you don't have to get the tube every day, it's so hard to go back to that. So yeah, I think I'd struggle now if it was to be reversed. But at the time, it was exciting and new, and I didn't know any different, I guess.
You mentioned there, like, having quite a tight niche and then expanding from there. I've spoken to a few people who suggest that in the US that they tend to be quite industry specific, but like across the whole of the US. Whereas I always believe in having a bit more of a tighter niche than that, and maybe just doing New York or whatever that may be. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, how do you, like? I don't think I don't know. Obviously, there might be different examples where even if you're doing the whole US, you might be talking about 300 candidates that are relevant or whatever. But I think that's what I normally encourage. I bring guys in now, and it's like, cool, here's your search for your market. It's going to be like 700 candidates, let's say. I think 450, 500 of them won't be relevant. Okay, so we've got 250, 300 candidates now. We've then got maybe 150 companies for which those people work and are potential clients. That's your landing pad. That's your starting spot. And, as quickly as you can dominate and exhaust that and prove that you have the organization and ability to follow up and ability to eke out everything you can, you then pick up another state or another search. But I think it's not limiting anyone to that, but it makes sense to start somewhere. And why not start somewhere that's geography focused? And then it is a bit easier to split it up. Any way you can reach out in a specialized, personalized, tailored way is the key to winning business. And like I say, people would go to the US and just be generalists, like, yeah, I'm an anaplanner, here's an anaplanner, and try and get out to 1,000 people. I don't think that will wash now. If it does, then someone needs to tell me and I can go back to those days. But I think there's probably a reason I've stepped away from that.
So if because there's so many recruitment agencies now that are perhaps most of their business is based in the UK, but they're considering, branching out and doing the US just because they get lured in by the bigger fees and
Yeah,
potentially it being less saturated. Like, what advice would you
yeah.
give to someone looking to start in the US?
Yeah, you get longing eyes across like, and it's interesting. When I started, there was no comparison. Like I say, we were a small office, so I was in my lane. I was working on £4,000 deals with universities, anything I could get my hands on, but it was generally like average fee 7, 8K tops, let's say. But that was huge to me. Like to be able to win business of £7,000, that was amazing. If I had someone in the same office as me closing deals that were £40,000 in the US, I might be like, oh, wow, what am I doing here? And I might have lost kind of focus, and I might have got distracted. So I'm competitive, and I want to do well, and I want to be the best. So I think it's understanding, and it's understandable when people have those kind of, like eyes that wander over to like a US team, let's say, if it's in their business or whatever, and understand that. But I think it's tip of the iceberg. If someone's doing really, really well in US and they're doing, regular 40, 50K deals, that's bloody hard, like that's really difficult. Like it may look easy once you've got a client that's done 4 deals and it's 200K and you're there fighting for a 15K. It's equally hard, don't get me wrong. But I think, yeah, you just got to have the right intentions. You've got to be successful in the UK. Like if you're not doing 350K plus in the UK, then, you've still got stuff to learn and you still need to focus on that, But if you've had increasing billings year on year where you've done 100K, 170, 280, 340, then you've obviously got that ability to maybe extrapolate that even more and have each of your deal worth more. But I think if you're doing okay numbers and you've got a bit of momentum, I think you're better off doing that than jumping to something new just because, yeah, the deals are bigger. So I think, yeah, you've got to be wary, and you've just got to think, what do you need to do with your year next year? If you build 450K in the UK, would you be happy? And if the answer to that is yes, then just continue what you're doing, because you can do that. Those numbers, you can do 1 million in the UK. Obviously, people are doing millions in the UK, so do that. So yeah, I wouldn't discourage it, but you've got to have the right intentions and you've got to have the right kind of track record. Not, yeah, I'm doing okay in the UK and that will make it easier. And so I think that's it. Like the attitude is someone's like, oh, that's easier. That's the wrong approach. It's not, oh, that will be easier to get more money for the same thing. It's like, that's not right. Like if you really have really specific financial goals and you really, really want to achieve great success and you're really, really motivated, then it's a great place for that. If you just want an easier life and get like more for the same, it's probably the wrong place, and you probably will get swallowed up in it.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I would like to move on to management. So, look, we all know that like good recruiters often get thrust into management positions, and they're not potentially ready for it. Like, what's your approach to management, and more specifically, like getting the best out of people who are perhaps not where you'd like them to be?
Yeah, well, I guess, I think that's, again, it's changed. I've been managing for 8 years now, and yeah, when I didn't get thrown into it. I was keen to do it, but obviously, yeah, you're 24 years old, 25 years old. You've just got a bit of momentum yourself, and now you're responsible for someone else. So I'm very precious of that now, and I want to make sure people are getting into into management for the right reason. Like it's cool to say you're a manager. It's cool to tell your mates that you've now got someone that reports into you, and it's cool to say you're interviewing for stuff. But again, that probably isn't going to equal long-term management success. You need to really care. You need to be interviewing and be like, you want to be doubtful. Am I ready for this? Like, this is a big responsibility. Like, I really want to be successful at this. I really want someone coming into my team to be successful. Am I ready? So a bit of doubt there, I think, shows that you've got the right intentions rather than going in from maybe an ego-driven perspective. And it's tricky, right? Like a billing manager, it's a tricky job. But you get paid the most for it. You've got multiple revenue streams all of a sudden. Like you're gonna have more work to do. And I think that's the key thing again. Every time I took on more management, I was like, okay, I need to get in the office earlier. Like one of our managers parted ways in the business. I had a team of 5 to add to my current team. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, I've been doing US hours 9 till 9. I'll probably need to get in at 7 now. There was more earning potential for me there. I could see myself getting that team to £1 million. That's, 5% of that, whatever, is a decent amount. But I can't just expect to inherit and hope that they do okay. And if they don't do okay, it's a reflection on them. I think that's the thing. You've got to take pride in it. Like their results are your results. And I think that's my key mantra, I think, with it is like, you've got to get into it for the right reasons. And I think where, like, to answer the second part of your question, when people aren't performing, you need to just question, are they giving their all? Are they working really, really hard? And are they really, really committed? And if it is, I'll stick with that person forever and they'll get a lot of time from me. But if I kind of It's like a 7 out of 10 in response to that question, then that's where I don't have any patience, for that, and I think that's my key thing here is like you're either on target or you're the hardest working person in the room. I'll support each of those two people forever. We've had people in this business that haven't done deals, but they've been the hardest working people. And I'll like, it'll be mad to get rid of that person, in my opinion. Like, that's all the job takes eventually. I want them to get the most out of it. The last thing I want is someone working really, really hard and not earning good money. There are better jobs to do for lesser money. So as long as we're on a route to success, I'll stick with that person. So it's all about getting into the world as well. If someone isn't performing, but they're working really hard, there's just something they're not doing that you can tweak. And it's not a motivation question. You don't need to get into a meeting room with them and say, hey, what's going on? We haven't got any interviews. If they're motivated and accountable, they'll know that already, and it's an advisor told me that you've got to be a coach, not a pundit, like the pundits at half time are saying, oh, they're not scoring any goals, like they're rubbish, like the manager's rubbish. The manager's in the changing room trying to find a solution. He knows they're not scoring goals, but he's trying to work out a tactic or a way of playing that will change that. And I think that's the key thing with being a recruitment manager is like you've got to get in the world. You've got to see what they're doing. Most of recruitment is invisible. They're just sat there and they're on calls every now and then, but you're not seeing what they're doing. They're not handing any work to you. So if they're working really hard, it's your job to change it. If they're not working really hard, then that's your job to maybe change that situation. But if they are working hard, that's a reflection on you. You've got someone really hard working in your team and they're not performing. That's a management issue, in my opinion, and you need to be responsible to change it, basically.
I love that. You're either on target or you're the hardest working person in the room. I'm definitely going to steal that. But if someone is working really hard, and you're convinced by their attitude, how do you get into the weeds of it? Like what typically will you look at?
Yeah, so I think it's obviously the job gets overcomplicated, right? But it's whoever speaks to the most candidates and whoever speaks to the most clients will earn the most money, And obviously there's a quality issue in those conversations, and you make sure that they're saying the right things and they're spotting opportunity. But that's it. I'll just be like, cool. What jobs have we got working on at the minute? Okay, cool. What's the problem with those? Okay, cool. What search are you doing for those? Show me that search. Okay, show me that message that you sent for that. And you just go all the way down the chain until you find an issue. It's normally a quantity issue or a quality issue. They're either not sending enough messages, which you can then help them send more messages. Again, it's not enough to say you're not sending enough emails or you're not doing enough outreach. They're doing maximal outreach, especially if we're saying they're hardworking, and then quality, you need to get in and see that message. I find it funny. Like I've fallen foul to it. You help people so much, and then you never see what messages they're sending out. Like you just like, oh yeah, cool. I've done loads of BD. Okay, what managers did you chase? Oh, I sent 100 emails. Okay, cool. That will probably equal something then. Like it's just that lazy kind of billing manager route. Lazy is a bit harsh, but it's corner cutting. It's just trying to be okay, cool. But they're doing a lot, so I'm sure it will come around. It's okay, cool. Let me see those managers. Let me go into your Excel sheet. Are they the right managers that you should be contacting, or have we actually done our mapping incorrectly? And 40 of those managers are completely irrelevant. So we've already gone from 100 chances down to 60. And then we've got 20 bounce backs, and we haven't found new emails for us. Oh, I didn't know how to find bounce back emails or whatever. Okay, cool. Well, there's a bounce back task that we can do. And it's just whittling it down to a very small thing. I think people try and fix the world, especially when someone isn't performing. You look at their desk as like a holistic view and you try and change everything. I think you just need to try and change one thing. Maybe it's just they're going after one lead and you help them chase that lead, and hopefully they would have picked up 4 or 5 nuggets from that process that they can then use across the board. But I think that's how I try and do it. You just ask questions until you've got a task that then you can then hold them accountable to over the next couple of days and keep and follow up. That's the key thing. People have check-ins and catch-ups, and then they get busy and then they don't follow up, and then a week transpires and you're still in the same spot. And I think with underperformers, you just need to have much more regular check-ins, like every couple of hours, really, so that Craig uses the great, I guess, turn of phrase, like logic leaps. With experience, you make a logic leap to the next thing that you're going to do. And it's normally quite an accurate one. With zero experience or limited experience, and you're left to your own devices for 4 hours, you might have made little logic leaps with that task that you were set, and you've ended up in a completely different spot to where your manager thought they were putting you. So it's just those regular check-ins are probably necessary after setting a quantifiable task.
How often, I know you said once you've given that advice, it can be every couple of hours, especially if they're a rookie. But how often are you typically checking in with people in your team and identifying underperformance if it is there?
Yeah. Well, I'm like allergic to like recurring meetings. I just hate like a same meeting every week, which I know is the most common thing ever. But I just find it gets like a tick box exercise, and you do it and you're kind of there, especially if it's on Monday morning or whatever, or Friday afternoon. It's just like a tick box. So I much prefer to be ad hoc with those things, and I'd have like my new to recruitment people send me like a day review and a day plan and stuff, and make sure I have that visibility. So it's more constant than that, and it's more regular. And especially like I sat in between two grads, and for 6 weeks I was probably checking in every 25-30 minutes. Like, what are you doing there? What's that message you're writing? Let me just check that. Okay, cool, that's good. Every cool, I would just change this, I would just alter this one thing. And we're constructive. Like, I want people to be great, so you're not going to be great, and you need feedback to get you there. So I think we need people that are comfortable with that as well, and don't need to be in a one-on-one to receive feedback, because you only get a tiny bit of it. It just needs to be real time. So I think real time ad hoc is much my preferred, rather than like regular check-ins, which are much more common, but I find they lack a bit of purpose after a while anyway.
Yeah, that's really interesting. One thing I've noticed in the last couple of years is like non-billing managers seem to be going out of fashion a bit. Whereas when I was first getting into management, say like 2018, 2019, it was like, right, you'd be a billing manager, you'd grow that to a team of maybe 5 or 6. Then once your team was at 6, you'd be off the phones effectively. But I
Yeah.
feel like that role, yeah, isn't as prominent anymore. Like, what's your thoughts on non-billing managers?
Yeah. Well, we've had a couple, and I don't get it really. Like, it's generally like the people that are able to win business, build great relationships, then start not doing that. Like, I think that's the key thing. I think the best way to manage is by winning jobs for your team. Like, you can be the best manager in the world, but if your team don't have any jobs or ability to win them, they're going to really struggle. Whereas you can almost be the worst manager in the world, but if you're giving them a job a week, it's a lot more likely you're going to have a profitable, high performing team. So I get it, and they can be great coaches, and it definitely would free up time to really specialize in that stuff. But I think winning business is the biggest thing you can do as a leader in a recruitment company, and I think that's the thing that especially now people are struggling to do the most, and that's where they need the most help with. And I think you can then have like learning and development and coaches around that are maybe more geared to that, and like academy style training. But I think leaders in recruitment teams, I kind of want them to be, winning business. And as I see the evolution in this office, I see all our leaders going out, flying around the US all the time, building great relationships and bringing jobs back. That's where I want us to get to, not like a non-billing element, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, no, makes sense. I want to move on to recruitment's reputation. So, I think this is less so in the US, to be honest, from what I've experienced, but particularly in the UK, recruitment doesn't have the best reputation. I think it's fair to say a lot of people love to hate recruiters. So, in your opinion, why is that?
I mean, I think any reputation is damaged. Any industry is damaged by the people who do it not very well. And I think maybe we have a slightly higher percentage of that. But if you think about builders, you have the element of cowboy builders that rip people off, so that really you would only get people to do work for you that or a mate knows, and that whole industry is built on those kind of referrals, because it's hard to necessarily trust a builder that you don't know because of those ones that maybe aren't so trustworthy, as it were. But I think it's similar in recruitment. If you're constantly getting bombarded by irrelevant messages, you're getting called all the time, they're not listening to what you're looking for, and everything they're sending you isn't relevant, it's not personalized, and you feel a bit of self-interest in their motivations to be in touch with you, then I think it's understandable. But if you have a recruiter that gets you an unbelievable job that you otherwise would never have been introduced to, and they're really well connected in your market, and they know loads about the space, and they can advise you on how to get the best salary and get the best kind of situation for yourself, it'd be weird to not like that. It's the same with estate agents. I've got no problem with estate agents. A estate agent got me a flat that I was really happy with in London 6-7 years ago. If you speak to an estate agent and say, hey, I want a 3-bed house in Hertfordshire under 500k, and the next day they send you 3 houses that fit perfectly that description, that's obviously a really good service that you want to be in touch with. If they send you 5 flats in Croydon the next day for 1 million, let's say, it's probably a little bit less worthwhile, and you probably have a little bit of a less positive impression. So I think that's it. It doesn't take. There's no barriers to getting into recruitment. There's no barriers of entry. So there probably is a relatively low bar that puts a little bit of a stain on the market. But I think that's the same as any industry. I think we're just more in people's faces. Like anyone who's selling something. The same with estate agents. They're just there. Like most accountants aren't calling people up and annoying them, and like I say, I don't believe any cool or qualified good recruiter should ever be annoying. It's like I always say here, we're selling a three-wheel car. If you call someone up who wants to buy a three-wheel car, but they don't have the budget for it right now, they'll still really appreciate your call because that's hard to find. So I don't lose sleep over the reputation of it. I try and be a good one, but it's a bit of a shame you can't say what you do with too much pride, but so be it.
Looking back on your career, can you think of any ways or any times when you've potentially contributed to that bad reputation?
Uh, I think I've always had good intentions, but I've definitely made mistakes. Like I've definitely, I was working with a candidate who I was getting an offer for, but I was really keen to get more jobs and more opportunities. So I was frantically calling up people. This guy was like, "Oh yeah, I really need like that kind of person." And I was like, "Amazing, yeah. I've got their resume now. I'll flick it right across to you. Like, just stay on the phone." So I was doing it all in like a haze, and obviously it was I anonymized the profile, so to anyone that didn't know him, it didn't declare his identity, but that was actually his current manager that I was sharing that to and things. So there's definitely that, and like there's definitely been placement. I would have helped 450 placements, and there are definitely placements where I feel like this is unbelievable, and there are other moments where you're like, oh, I maybe wouldn't, but if that's if that's the candidate you've picked out of those three or four, who am I to maybe say? But I think also that feeling is one that I try and have now with conviction and know that I have as good a judgment as anyone on that. But in your earlier days, you definitely have a feeling of this is probably above my station, but this doesn't feel like a perfect match, But if those two parties are happy, then so be it. But yeah, I'm not trying to paint myself as whiter than white or perfect, but nothing other than like mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes, like I've made a huge amount. I remember I shared the wrong terms to a client. I actually shared their competitors' terms, which were at a far lower rate than the ones that they were. And this was I was like 18 months in. So I was called into their office with the CEO and whatever to kind of explain myself on that. And the relationship was completely different. The rates reflected a poor relationship with the other client and stuff, but obviously no one cares about that. So I think if you're working with real speed and intensity, you're going to make mistakes, but you just got to hold your hands up. And as long, like I say, you have good intentions. And I have been very good with that, in terms of like poaching from current clients and all that stuff. I just put a real black and white rule on myself. I found a recruitment company took someone out of our business 2 weeks before. They'd been saying they wanted to, be an extension of our business and wanted to be everything to us. And then they did that. And I was a bit like, well, that doesn't really ring true for me. So then as soon as you make a strong stance like that, when it benefits you, you've got to have that same stance when it might benefit you the other way, but it might be an immoral decision based on the stance you've made. So yeah, there are things that pop up, but you've just got to think it's a small space. Your reputation is most important. Again, have that patience to be like, this is what will get me a better situation in the next 4 weeks, but what will the outlook be in the next 2 years is a decision I try and have all the time anyway.
Yeah, I think that the two mistakes you alluded to there are probably fairly common in the industry. Well, I say common as in I don't think they happen all the time, but I think a lot of
Yeah.
recruiters who've been in the industry for a decent period of time would have probably made those mistakes. But like you said, it's having the good intentions, and I think if you do, you're less likely to make them. That's for sure.
I think at the start you are a lot more, there is a lot more self-interest involved. You can be a lot more desperate. I remember when my first deal, I was absolutely desperate for it to happen, and you kind of, all the emphasis is suddenly on you, and really you should just be a byproduct of it, So I think with experience and a bit of success, it does become easier to I guess take your self-interests out of it a little bit, which I think at the start, and especially when you're starting a new business or a new business unit, you're desperate to make things happen, when it's a little bit harder to be so like selfless or perfect or wider than white or whatever.
What's the biggest misconception you think people have about recruiters?
I think, I guess, I was going to say that it's easy, but I don't want to say that it's not easy. Like, I don't think people think it's easy. I think obviously in isolation, I think any one, transaction or deal can be relatively straightforward, and a client can be a bit aggrieved at spending, let's say, 40K for a resume, someone that they might have even loosely known or whatever, but you've popped it over at the right time. But there's obviously a lot of work that goes into creating that opportunity, and there's a lot of stuff that you don't get paid for. So I don't know about misconceptions. I think people probably have a pretty good idea of it. I think, it's not to say it's accurate or whatever, but I think again, there's let's say there's 1,000 different recruiters, they're all behaving in a slightly different way. So there's an average that comes out of that is probably about right. But I think it is something that you can be really good at. It is something that you can take pride in, and it is something that you want to be the best at. And it's not just lobbing CVs and hoping something sticks. You can be a true like expert in a market, and that's what we're aspiring to be. I want to be an expert in the market I work in, and I occasionally place talent as well. Like rather than all I do is, yeah, if you haven't got if you're not hiring right now, there's no value in speaking to me. Then that's what we're trying to shift. And I think you should be speaking to us anyway, regardless of what you're doing, hiring or not, because we've got the eyes and ears. So
I agree. I think if you just continue to add value all the time, it will come back around, and you can't be transactional. So
yeah.
yeah,
And it's stuff like this, it's stuff like this podcast, like for you, like, it takes years to realize the benefit of this stuff, and it's all about that kind of, but if you don't do it, then you'll never realize it, and it's never a priority. Like, it's not a priority for you today to do this podcast with me for an hour. Like, that's not going to increase revenue in the next 2 or 3 weeks, but it will increase revenue in the next 2 or 3 years, So I think it's just that patience again is the key thing. And it's never a priority to plan for the future, but then the future soon comes and you're in the same rabbit wheel of like doing 200K, 250K, doing a deal every now and then. Like, that's what I'm keen for people to avoid, is just that getting ahead of that average in recruitment, which, well, what does that equal? They're saying UK 65,000 pounds, maybe 70, whatever. Like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. But again, there are more fun careers, I think, to have for that. I want people in this company to be 100K plus, and then there aren't many more fun careers than recruitment for that money. Like, I think that is, pound for pound, when I was just an individual contributor, I said I was the least stressed person in the world, because I was happy with the money I was earning, and I was able to just, cool, I was just focusing on selling and doing deals and whatever, and then pressure was just that I was putting on myself versus a solicitor who gets a load amount of work given to them, a doctor, like all those kind of like professions that are 100K plus. It's hugely stressful when you don't have control of it. So that's the key thing, I think, of recruitment that's great. So if you're earning over 100K, I don't think there are many better jobs. If you're earning less than 40, 50 and you're 5, 6, 7 years in, it's a struggle, like if you're in your first couple of years, then it's a road to that money. But I think that's why it's a great industry to be in, is if you're on that road, to get there.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, just moving on to a few, let's say, contentious topics, or topics that can divide opinion on LinkedIn. What's your take on KPIs?
Well, I think they stand for key performance indicators, which kind of imply that they're quite important. But I think if you're like, for rookies and people you bring in, I think they're really important. They're an indicator of effort and like care. I think they're control stats that you can want to hit or not hit. So I think it's a really good indicator just to show someone's application to want to impress really and want to work hard. So I think they get less important as you go along, and we hopefully tailor off that. And if someone's doing really, really well, KPIs aren't that important. Like if someone isn't doing that well, then you need to trace things back. It's similar to what I was talking about. You need to find a reason for it, and that's when a KPI becomes quite relevant. It's rare that someone will have a low performance and 5 weeks prior they're smashing every kind of granular activity out the park. So I think it's useful to keep you on track. And like I said, no one keeps KPIs for me, but I still try and chat to 15 candidates every week. I've done that for 10 years, and that's what I need to speak to 15 good candidates a week, 8, 9 CVs, 6, 7 interviews, and I'll bill £1 million. It's like that's where it comes from, and that's something I want to track. So I think it's a bit egotistical to not want to care about that stuff. I think it leads up to a bigger pie, but I think if all you're worried about is KPIs, is again that lazy pundit-esque stuff. It's like, cool, you're not doing enough. Okay, well, if they're motivated, then you need to find out why they're not doing enough, and you need to dive into it. So there's a place for them, but I think if you're a lazy manager that just looks at stats, regurgitates that back to a team and puts pressure on them if they're low, it's not that useful. If you use them to then build up a project and a task to try and improve them and try and help them, if those numbers aren't exactly, then they're useful. But again, you've got to go into that depth to get the best out of them, I think.
Yeah. What's your take on hybrid working?
Yeah, I know. I like being in the office, and I'm in the office every day. It would be nice to work from home every now and then, but like I learned recruitment from someone that was in the office every day, sat next to me, helping me. Like my opinion is you're either learning recruitment and then you want to be in the office to learn from others, or you're good at recruitment, and I want you to be around others so they can learn from you. Like that's a simple attitude, and I want to give flexibility. We have 3 days in the office, 2 days from home, and I want people to be flexible when they need it. Like I want top performers to be able to do whatever they need to be a top performer. So there's no there's no absolute rule in my role world, but I think it's a team sport, recruitment. Like everyone gets into it because they're people's people. They want to be around people, and I think you can thrive off the energy. When you're having a good day, it's great to have a good day around other people. When you're having a bad day, it's good to have other people around that you can grab a coffee with and kind of begrudge that. So I think it's a team sport. I think it's great. If I think about the company I'm trying to build here in the office, it's in office and it's people that want to be in office. I'll give you all the flexibility you want if you're giving me everything. If you're working really hard, Freya and Craig here work really, really hard. They're in the office every day. If they said to me, "Hey, I want to go to Spain for 2 weeks and be remote and just teach art," of course you can. Like you've earned that right, like that's how I think it should be, give and take. If you're then cutting corners and asking for allowances, it's a little bit trickier. So give me everything and you can do whatever you want that's conducive for you being healthy and sustainable. Because I don't want people burning out or anything like that. But you're in sales, you're high energy, you're a people's person, just get in the office and hang around. And I think it's just a harder choice. It's harder being in the office. It's harder. I got out this morning at 5:20. It was -7 degrees in New York. I was in the gym at 10 to 6. I was in the office at 7:20. That's hard. What wouldn't be hard is waking up at 6, rolling onto my laptop for a bit on like barely getting changed, then rolling to the gym at 9, coming back, picking up a coffee on the way. That's easy, and I just want people to pick a hard life now so that in 10 years they're retired and they're not even talking about hybrid work and they're talking about whether they work or not, basically.
Yeah, that's a great answer. What's your take on how LinkedIn's used these days?
Well, yeah, I don't know if you know, but I'm posting a fair bit now, and actually quite enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it took me a long time to do it. Freya's amazing. Like, she's been kind of championing it for us for a long time, and she gets a lot of business from it. And even when you see someone get business from it, it's a bit stupid that it doesn't just like, okay, cool, you can get business from it, and stuff. But I think yeah, I'm not posting. I post about my charity stuff because hopefully I can help raise some money, but I wouldn't post anything personal. And it's all about your audience. I think our audience is CFOs and senior finance people and stuff. So you want to post what they want. If I was in Rec to Rec, it kind of benefits to post a slightly glamorous life or holidays that you've been on to then, attract the kind of person that you want, So I think it does depend on your audience. And as long as it's relevant for them, then so be it. But I've been enjoying it. The more I've got into it and the more I've been doing it, it's like anything. You just have to make it a non-negotiable. There's something I do twice a week or whatever, and then you manage it.
One thing I've noticed since doing the American market is, and it's it's happening in the UK as well, but certainly more in America, is the prominence of a more 180 model versus a full 360 model. Now I know you guys like people to be 360. Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? I think since the start, it's always been a conversation. And whenever I've had interviews with people, there's been people that have been 180 and 360. And I think in a good market, when things are going really well, it works really, really well. I think, when there's a surplus of jobs, you've got loads of clients, they've got active jobs, then you can bring people in and they can source for that. I think when things are a bit trickier, and people don't necessarily have an excess jobs, I think people can manage that full desk a little bit more. My focus here has been, for the first 3 months, we bring someone in, it's a manager's job to give them a job platform and a chance of billing inside that 3 months. They might be chasing like 2 or 3 companies a week and trying to learn all the skills that are required, but they're not really expected to get BD results yet until after that. And it's almost, have they shown an aptitude to do the whole job? So we're changing a little bit on that, because I think, especially now, new to recruitment, new to company, it's tricky to win jobs. It's tricky to have the credibility to win business. So we're constantly flexible on it. And like I say, I think in an ideal world, I'm going to have leaders here that are really, really good business development people, which might give us a bit of flexibility to almost shift someone a little bit more towards that. But I think if I was an individual, you want to be winning business. You want to be in control of your destiny. And especially if you were to look out for roles elsewhere, when the market's great, again, there'll be 180 positions that are available, but it does limit your options quite a lot.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there about, like, if it was you wouldn't want to be surplus to requirements.
Yeah.
And I think we saw sort of coming out of COVID, everyone just needed 180 people because there was a surplus of jobs. And then sort of come 2023, they looked around the room and realized they weren't really equipped to deal with that market. Final one, AI. What's your thoughts on the impact of it in the recruitment industry? Are you utilizing it?
I was just about to say something, but then I'm worried that you're going to take, like, as you should do, take like real headlines from this. And I was just going to say, I did say in the office a couple of months ago, as if this generation could get any lazier when in the discussion of AI. But yeah, don't maybe take that completely out of context. But actually, it's pretty much in context, even as I said it. But I think it's something we're getting a new technology with AI in January, which we're pretty excited about in terms of being able to like kind of search the system and create kind of suggestions for roles and shortlists and things. So that seems exciting. And it's certainly the way that things are going. My brother, who's a few years older than me and certainly a lot smarter, is telling me that we have to adopt it and that's the way things are going. So I don't actually like it. I think it's a bit of a leveler. Even like a good email that you then write, people are questioning if it's AI or not. So so whether it's going to be good for us and good for everyone. I think that's the other thing with the hybrid working is we don't want people to lose skills, like when I was 22, 23, like being in London every day was amazing, and the social scene in the evening and things and the friendships you'd make and whatever. And also that kind of social anxiety. If you were going to an event where you didn't really know anyone and then your mate said, "Oh, should we not go?" You're like, "Yeah, let's not go. Let's just go down the pub." Like as soon as you have it out to not do things, I think it's easy. So if you had a meeting and it was like, "Oh, you can join on Zoom or you can come in and do it face to face," I imagine a lot of people will pick like Zoom for that stuff, and lose those kind of people skills. And that's understandable. Like it's the easier option, it's more comfortable, So I just worry with AI and like I say, remote working, is it gonna limit the social skills or the independence of thought that people have, that's I guess it's probably a bit above my station to care about that, but that's my thoughts on where it could go anyway.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. Like you're the first person I've asked that question, so I'm interested to see what other people think about it.
Yeah.
I think what you mentioned there with Woo AI and just being able to pull more data from the system, for example, based on having perhaps really thorough reg notes or whatever. I think that it's a really smart use case, but
Yeah.
to use it for things like writing an email and stuff like that,
Yeah. And I'm
it's
a bit,
really
and
cutting
I'm a bit,
corners.
yeah. I don't know, like I don't know how I describe it, but I happily go the extra yard on all this stuff. So then if there's a chance for someone else to miss out that yard and still be where I am, that feels a bit like I don't like that, like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
interesting, but it's so and obviously hopefully it should help me go the extra yard again, and maintain that kind of stuff. But yeah, technology isn't my strong point. If there's ever anyone can ask me anything in the office, but if it's technology related, they know to ask anyone else because my parents could barely get a printer working when we were at home. I always remember having to try and print something off for school and just knowing that it wasn't going to work, even though there's no reason why it shouldn't. So I think that stained me a little bit. I like things as simple as possible. So yeah, we'll see. But we're definitely pushing. Our CFO is big on it. And we have a great back office team, so we're well set up to be able to be right at the forefront of that kind of AI stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if you were to ask me in a year's time. Hopefully, I can say, well, I wouldn't be able to live without it. And we've just had our best performing year, and we can put it down to that. So that would be. But you have to have an open mindedness for that to be possible. So I need to work on that.
Well, look, at least I've got my headline anyway, so thank you. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what's next for you and Codex then?
Yeah, so another year of growth hopefully next year. The last couple of years have been decent. They wouldn't have been what we forecasted. Like we're forecasting 20% growth every year in terms of like revenue and stuff to get where we want to get to, and it hasn't been that. We've grown marginally both years, which I think is a decent enough performance, and I'm hoping that we've built a lot of skills to consolidate and go again. So yeah, next year we forecasted for good growth again, but we'll play it by ear. You don't want to confuse headcount success with actual success, So I want to make sure we maintain performance, but we're aiming to sell the business in the next 4 or 5 years. We 50% of the company is employee owned, so we're hoping everyone's in that shared collective. We haven't been able to shout about it as much as possible, the scheme, because we haven't been growing as much as we need to for it to be a viable purchasable option. So yeah, all roads to that. It'll be another year of challenges and difficult stuff, but it's good. It's good fun.
Yeah. And I always like to finish with this question. You touched on early, for example, in 10 years' time, you want to be looking at whether I need to work or whether I retire. I know you just
Yeah.
used it as an example, but what does success look like to you moving forwards, and has that changed over time?
Well, I mean, if I'd said where I'd be now, then 10 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, well, I can't believe that, And like I said, of the earning, like the things I've been able to earn and afford and do things, like I would never have thought, but I haven't been happy. I haven't been content all the way along that, you know. So it's never felt like, okay, cool, I've completed it, or we're there. So I think it's just continuously getting better at something, you know. But I think, yeah, success for me is when I'm 40, 45. I keep saying 40, and I'm actually like 8 years away. So that's actually coming quite close. But like 45, 50, I've got like a paddle club in Portugal, you know, I've got a sports bar in like a ski resort, and that's what motivates me. You know, we do an aspiration session here at each Christmas party and say, where do you want to be in a year, 3 years in retirement? And people say really cool stuff. And it's just making sure that we're all living each day that will actually get us there. So I think, yeah, success is just being happy and being able to do what you want to do. You know, I think I'm really passionate about work, but not for work's sake. You're passionate to be able to live the life you want. So whatever free time you've got, you can do whatever. So I think success is just that, like being happy and working alongside people that you want to work alongside, and you're inspired by the work they do, and you're excited about where you can go with it, I guess.
Amazing. Well, look, I think that's a good place to round it out. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate
Cool.
it.
No, amazing. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me. It was good.